Hello, and welcome to another in our series of CMMI Tech Talks looking at specific practice areas within the CMMI model. In today's talk, we're going to review the continuity practice area, otherwise known as CONT. We will discuss the intent of this practice area and look at what value it can provide to an organization, as well as looking at the individual practices to see how they can be used to help protect the organization and minimize disruption caused by catastrophic events. Continuity is one of three practice areas within the Managing Business Resilience capability area, which is in the Managing category. All the practice areas in this capability area are concerned with mitigating and managing the effects of events that may have a detrimental impact on business. Continuity is specifically concerned with the big, usually unpredictable events that typically have a catastrophic impact on the entire organization. Continuity is part of the services domain. In 2019, the COVID-19 virus first appeared in China, and by mid-2020, much of the planet was in some form of lockdown to try to limit its spread. Even those areas that were not in full lockdown had to initiate substantial public health actions to help limit the spread and treat those who had become ill with the virus. In almost all walks of life, the world changed overnight. In many parts of the world, offices were closed and people were requested to work from home. This had a very profound effect on not just the people who were living through the pandemic, but also the businesses that were trying to continue to operate despite an ever-increasing set of challenges that were put in their way. Remote working, using cloud services and video conferencing and online collaboration tools became the new normal for millions of people around the world. While few organizations would have been fully prepared to meet the challenges of COVID-19 seamlessly, many did have some plans in place to help counter the impact of such an outbreak, thanks to their continuity planning. It is precisely because of situations such as an unexpected global pandemic that the practices of continuity exist. And through being aware of these practices, we can help to protect ourselves from future catastrophes, even if we can't know exactly what they might be. We shall start our tour by looking at the key mandatory model components, the high-level intent and value statements. Intent anticipates and addresses disruptions to critical business operations so work can continue or resume as soon as possible. Value enables continued operation when serious disruptions or catastrophic events occur. Note the phrase critical business operations. There's no expectation we will be able to resume all business operations immediately in the aftermath of a catastrophic event, so a key part of continuity planning is working out which functions are essential and which can be deferred until later. The intent is to enable as much work as possible to resume as quickly as possible. The degree to which continued operation of the business is possible may depend to a certain extent on the nature of the business and the provisions that have been put in place. The practices of continuity go up to practice group level 3 and reflect the expected evolutionary progression towards increasing capability. The level 1 practice directs us to start developing contingency approaches to manage disruption to the business. At level 2, we start to be a bit more formalized and managed in our approach to contingency planning, firstly by identifying critical functions and resources, and then by establishing fully formed continuity plans. Finally, at level 3, we look at providing effective continuity training to all staff as necessary, and we plan for the delivery of this training as well as analyzing its effectiveness. Continuity is an interesting practice area in that while the practices can be applied in a level 2 manner at the project or instance level for specific types of issue, it generally makes a lot more sense for organizations to perform larger continuity planning at an organizational level, since critical business functions and resources tend to be shared across the organization. Hence, individual projects or business units could have continuity plans in place for a global pandemic, but since these plans will invariably involve shared services, there's likely to be a limit as to how far these preparations can go at the project level. Let us now turn to the individual practices within the continuity practice area. CONT 1.1 directs us to develop contingency approaches for managing significant disruptions to operations. As well as identifying what actions should be taken in the event of a disruption, this practice also directs us to start thinking about the circumstances in which a continuity plan response might be triggered. This is an important question, as business disruptions cannot always be neatly categorized into catastrophes and non-catastrophes. Some events may be hugely disruptive, but might well fall short of what we might consider to be sufficiently catastrophic to warrant invoking continuity contingency plans. So it is important to understand not just what action we wish to take at times of severe disruption, but also what the triggering threshold for that action should be. When we move to the level 2 practices, these contingency approaches become a lot more formalized. CONT 2.1 looks for us to identify what functions within our organization are most critical to enable business continuity. This can sometimes be an emotive subject that needs to be considered carefully and dispassionately. Many hugely important organizational functions may not be deemed essential when looking at them through a continuity perspective. Consider, for example, an organization that provides cloud hosting services to a large customer base. If their servers go down, they will be unable to provide their customers with the services they are contracted to deliver, which will have a massive impact on their business and customer satisfaction. They may also have a research and development department, otherwise known as R&D, exploring new or improved services or technologies for their future growth. If this organization were to be hit with a catastrophic event, such as an earthquake at the site of their main data center, then prioritizing the restoration of their cloud service infrastructure would likely be seen as an essential function. The business will suffer significantly if this does not happen. By contrast, the R&D function, though doubtless essential to the long-term growth of the organization, is unlikely to result in significant short-term consequences if it is not immediately restored. So in terms of business continuity, this is probably not an essential function. CONT 2.2 builds on this by looking for us to identify resources that are critical to business continuity. Resources in this case, and throughout the CMMI model, are not just restricted to human resources, staff, but can include systems, processes, data, and infrastructure. As we saw with the previous practice, a resource can be hugely important to the business, but not necessarily essential to business continuity in the short term. Returning to our cloud services organization, the effective operation of the data center might demand certain IT support staff to be always on site to carry out maintenance activities on the IT infrastructure, and hence keeping those resources working might be an essential resource. This is analogous to the idea of key workers, which was in common usage during the global pandemic. Having identified resources and functions that are critical to business continuity, CONT 2.3 then looks for us to develop a comprehensive plan for continuity to ensure those resources and functions are either protected or can be restored as quickly as possible. Note that a single business continuity plan may not be sufficient to deal with the variety of different types of scenarios that could occur. The response of an organization to a global pandemic may well need to be very different to the response needed to deal with a localized issue such as an earthquake or tornado or even a terrorist incident. Consequently, we need to consider what types of threat we might want to guard against and put in place continuity plans to address each one. These plans then need to be kept up to date and modified as the threat environment changes and as the organization's business needs evolve. At level 3, the practices place an increased emphasis on the communication and effectiveness of continuity plans and the training of people. CONT 3.1 is concerned with ensuring that we develop adequate training material for those who will need it, so that when a business continuity plan is invoked, people know what is expected of them. One of the major blockers to restoration of normal service is the confusion that a catastrophic event can cause. People's normal working routines are disrupted, and they do not necessarily know what is expected of them. By ensuring that people are trained in their expected response, we can remove confusion and increase individual effectiveness. A typical example of this is the fire evacuation drills that most organizations are required to conduct periodically. Everyone needs to understand how to evacuate the building in the event of a fire. Certain key individuals may have a marshalling role, so they need to understand what is expected of them to ensure everyone else exits the building quickly and safely. Other individuals may have responsibility for being a liaison with emergency services and facilitating their access to the site. The important thing here is that people need to know what their role is and what is expected of them, and if they are to perform this role effectively, they need to be trained to do it. CONT 3.2 is not just about delivering training relating to continuity, but also in ensuring its effectiveness. Using the fire evacuation example, if during a drill we discover that one part of a site took far longer to evacuate than the others, we might want to examine whether the training provided was sufficient for those people, or whether there was something peculiar about that particular area that prevented timely evacuation, in which case our training may need to be altered to take this into account. This feeds into the final practice, CONT 3.3, where we are expected to conduct verification and validation of our continuity plans to make sure they are fit for purpose. Remember, as our business changes, so will our priorities, and this may affect our continuity plans. We need to continuously test them to ensure they are providing us with the protection we need from possible disruptions and update them as our needs change. As a level 3 practice, there is also an inevitable feedback loop here. Our current and past plans and their effectiveness should inform our future plans. We should analyze how effective they are and use the information to improve our planned response. These then are the practices of the continuity practice area. To summarize the main points, continuity covers developing contingency plans to address serious disruptions to our business operations, identifying essential resources and functions and prioritizing them in our contingency response, and developing, providing, and testing the effectiveness of training to enable staff to effectively instigate contingency plans. Thank you for joining us for this CMMI Tech Talk. If you have questions, please contact us at support.isaca.org.